Oh, hi there. My name's Matt, and I'm with Camera Ambassador. This week, we're not doing the same type of tutorial videos and how-to videos that we usually do. The reason being is this week is NAB. Now, NAB, if you don't know, is basically a big show in Vegas where anybody, even slightly related to video work, comes and brings their latest, greatest, and everything that they have to show that they've been working on for the entire year. Now, what I want to do with this video, since we've been doing a lot of Facebook Live videos and showing you the gear in person and everything, is I kind of want to do a little bit of a recap over everything that we've seen, we've experienced. We're on a flight path, by the way, so if you hear that, that's what's going on. I also want to delve into a few things that I think could be very applicable and might be very eye-opening to you as a cinematographer. So let's go ahead and kick it off. Usually I don't do any notes, I don't do anything like that, but I did about 13 miles today, walking around and checking out new gear. So I'm gonna rely on the iPhone for this one. All right, so Ari. Now, Ari released a new sky panel. Well, they didn't release a new sky panel, but it might as well be a new sky panel. They have the 30, the 60, and the 120. Now, if you don't know, the sky panels are very soft light that wraps around your subject. It looks beautiful, and you've always been able to change and control the color of your light as far as being on the Kelvin scale. The last update that just came out, which was announced yesterday at NAB, is the 3.0 firmware update. Now what this update will allow you to do is to, I'm almost at a loss for words because it fixes so many problems that come along with lighting that I never thought would come in a light that I'd want to have to begin with. So this firmware update applies across the board for the Ari Sky panels. You're not going to find it in the L7 series, you're not going to find it obviously in the Fresnels or anything because they don't have any firmware. But what this allows you to do is you have 42 separate effects, for lack of a better word, that you're going to be able to use this light to be able to provide. So, for instance, one of the biggest problems that cinematographers have is replicating firelight. Usually what we'll do, and what I've seen others do, is to go ahead and rig up a whole bunch of light bulbs and have them all on dimmers and have a couple people flipping switches and bringing them up and down and everything just slightly and a little more, a little off, and doing that on a little hand squeezer or a Variac, a little dimmer. But this light, it doesn't have to be dimmed down. You don't have to worry about any of that, because behind the front of the sky panel, which is a very soft diffusion that allows, like I said, the light to wrap around your subject, what we have are hundreds and hundreds of these tiny little LED lights. Now what these do is these are all individually controlled by this remote that came out. Now the remote itself is additional and it does cost $340. You can pick up the USB cable and the remote to be able to plug right into the light and then use that as your master and daisy chain all of your other skylights together and be able to replicate the same effect. Now the effects go on endlessly, but the firelight was the one that I was the most excited about, because all of these LEDs are doing just a little something different. And if you want to go for a cooler fire or a hotter fire at 2000 Kelvin, or you want to go much higher and you want maybe, you know, a white hot fire type of thing going on, you can do that as well. This is definitely a game changer, even for me. For the next film that I'm going to be going out to shoot, I had to call somebody up immediately and say, hey, we need to change our gaffing pack or lighting package, because this just changed the game for us, and it's going to save time on our day. It's going to save equipment, and it's not really going to cost us too much. And the update, they're passing the update out on these tiny little RE USB drives that they're just handing out. and you can just plug it in and just go right off of that. So it's very easy to install, it's very easy to update. The remote allows you to dial in exactly how much sensitivity of this light you want to be able to use. Now, like I said, there are other sort of abilities with this light, it's the effects that they give you. One of them is a paparazzi effect, so if you have somebody walking out and you want it seeming like there's all these flashes going off in their face and everything, it can do that as well. Now, I did say that it's a soft light, but a flash would be a hard light, right? So how does that work? Well, it stays soft, but the light only stays soft as long as you're not punching the crap out of it. But this light has the ability to get really, really bright. It's definitely something that's very interesting and exciting, and it was one of the things that I was most pleased with to be able to see. Now, next on the list, we're going to talk about Ari's SMB matte boxes. Now, these matte boxes, if you've ever worked with matte boxes before and you've used quite a bit of lighting and tried to flare out a little bit or anything like that, you'll probably have had some point in time where you're getting a glare coming across your matte box, coming across whatever filter you have in there. And that can be really detrimental. I mean, for anybody that wants to get that crisp, clean image, or even somebody who's like, oh, we can't have that. We can't have a flare when we're having a romantic dinner scene or something like that. It's like, this isn't a J.J. Abrams film. Like, this is a comedy, and why are we having a flare go off in this? Or and there's so many points in times where you just don't want it. But what this matte box allows you to do is it allows you to literally tilt down a little bit, and that's all it takes. Tilt down, tilt up a little bit, and by being able to do that on these SMB matte boxes by Ari, you're able to just get rid of that glare. It's no longer in your frame, because you change the angle on the front element of your matte box to be able to not have that flare hitting your lens anymore, not being a problem anymore. So that was definitely exciting to see too. And that thing, it is built like a tank. I mean, most of Ari's equipment that I've seen, that I've used, that I've worked with, that I've thrown around as I'm trying to light something or get it together, it has a quality to it, and the quality is of a brick. I mean, Ari doesn't mess around. They make the top of the line equipment, and the great thing about this is that they haven't compromised here either. I've never touched, used, messed around with, just manhandled a matte box and not felt this same sort of stability that I can think of for quite a long time. It's built to last, and it's built to sustain whatever environments you want to put this thing through. And this matte box will definitely last you a very, very long time. It does have adapters on the back rings to be able to fit anamorphic lenses, which was a huge plus in my book. So that's about it for Ari. They do have a new follow focus system that I'm going to be checking out tomorrow. Every single time I went over there, it was just fully packed, and there are tons of people crowding around it. And I'm going to go in tomorrow morning, first thing, and shoot a video on that, and then I can update you again when NAB wraps up, and I'll give another follow-up just like this to be able to let you know what else we've ended up finding at NAB. Now that brings us to Movi. Now, Movi has been busy. Movi has been very, very busy. They released two new, I can't even call them handheld gimbal devices, because one of them's definitely not handheld unless you have two people. But they released two new stabilization devices to be able to, I can't even call it a 3-axis gimbal either. It's just, they're just making new decisions that are taking themselves further than I think anybody really had the idea to be able to go, aside from obviously the people at Movi who took them there. The first one is the XL. The Movi XL is a 3-motor major overhaul of the M15, of the Movi Pro, of it's just an entire leg up. I mean, we're talking about even just the support on the side of this octagon square shaped stabilizer is probably about that thick. I mean, they're not messing around. This thing is called the XL for a reason. Now, what are the specs of it? What can it do? Well, the specs with this stabilizer are, anytime there's a company that ends up doing really, really well and is a very quality company, they don't give you this is where we pushed it to, and then we couldn't get it any further than this, and so this is where it maxes out. They'll always give it this buffer room. They'll always take it back a little bit. And that's what Movi does, because they're a really good quality company, and they know that what they've designed can meet any expectations that you have of it. So the Movi XL can carry a rig up to 50 pounds. 50 pounds. That's, I mean, at Camera Ambassador we recently got in Hawk anamorphics. Now these are heavy, heavy lenses. The 35mm comes in at 11.9 pounds. This could take that no problem. I mean, they had Panavision camera and a Panavision glass. I believe it was a 28 to 250 on there, and it could obviously easily handle that. And they also had a massive Kessler jib there, and that was only rated to 80 pounds. So you figure, okay, we have 50 pounds on the camera, 50 pounds off the camera, and then whatever's left over of the XL weight. We're probably maxing that jib out at about that point. Now the other thing with this stabilizer is that it also has the ability to resist wind very, very heavily. Now what I love about this is that they told me that, it's rated up to about 90 miles an hour. I was like, oh, that's really fast. That's great. And they're like, yeah, but we got it up to 120 and it was still doing fine. You know, that's the level of quality that I love about Movi, that I love about art, that I love about these high quality companies, is that they know how far they can push that. And the reason I said that I love thinking about that is just because I know somewhere somebody's out there designing this rig and they're like, all right, let's go test this thing, and they're driving it at 120 miles an hour and it's still doing all right. Now, the next gimbal that was released from Movi, and not technically released yet, but it was announced, and this thing was not easy to get to. All right, this thing was put up and away from anybody's arm's reach. I mean, they took it down for a second, and the guy even had his elbows out, making like they're very protective of this possibly prototype that they have for what is called the Movi Carbon. Now, in order to explain the Movi Carbon, I gotta kind of describe it from the inside out, because that's how I understand it. First off, we start with the camera and the lens that come with the rig. Now, I know that sounds a little weird, but give it a second, because we're gonna start doing what I call the inception talk with this camera, and try to follow along. It took me a couple times to be able to do that. The internal camera that we have is the Sony a7S II. Mounted onto it is a Fujinon 24 to 240 mm lens. I don't know the aperture, I don't know what it stops down to, but that's the lens. Now, the a7S II has a technical ability to be able to move the sensor around a little bit to steady out your shot. So we have that first layer of stabilization, okay? Now, attached to the a7S II and the lens is an X and a Y axis. Just two axes. So now we have three methods of stabilization rather. We have the sensor itself stabilizing itself in steady shot mode. We have the X and the Y axis that are coming across and stabilizing the camera there. And then we have a housing that surrounds all of this. Now on the outside of this housing, we have three axes. We have roll, tilt, and pan. Now, these three axes stabilize the internal of the camera. All right, so these three axes stabilize the entire housing that's going on. So let's go over this again from the outside back in. We have three gimbals on the outside. On the interior of the housing for the camera, we have two gimbals on the X and Y axis, and then on the inside of the camera, if we have steady shot turned on, we have the sensor being able to move to correct for any corrections. So that means that we have the outside gimbals that are actually correcting any motion that you're making that's messing up. And then inside of that, inside of the housing, we have two other gimbals that are correcting any motion that those three outside gimbals could not fix. And then on the inside of the camera, we have the sensor that's finally fixing any corrections that the two inside gimbals were not able to fix. This is crazy. This is going to be an insanely steady camera. Now, another thing about this is that keep in mind we're dealing with a 24 to 240 lens, which means that technically on a full frame sensor, you could do a feature on that, no problem. You could definitely do that. And balancing, well, if the camera is set up and is secured, then we're not going to have to worry about balancing too much. That's going to be something that is able to be always set and always the way it's supposed to be. So I don't know, because obviously, like I said, we weren't able to see inside the housing. They actually had a sign on the back of the housing and it just said no. So whatever that means, I get a pretty clear picture, but I just figured I didn't even figure to ask. So what does this mean for visual storytelling? Well, what they described to me was not what I initially thought of, because I'm still thinking about using a Movi as a Movi, right? I mean, like, you get it for these shots where you used to use some form of Steadicam or some sort of dolly tracking or something like that. But this is how they described it to me. They said, imagine you're pushed all the way in at 240 and you're sprinting towards your subject who is way away. What's that gonna look like as you have this image just floating forward? I started thinking, I was like, yeah, that'd be interesting. Because it'd be so smooth, but you could move so quickly. And that's still thinking in the terms of a Movi. And then they told me something that really kind of shook me up a bit, and I haven't been able to pinpoint exactly what this would mean for visual storytelling. And that's this. They said, well, imagine if you have somebody else in the foreground, very close to the camera. Then the viewer is actually going to realize just how far away this person is. And what's that going to mean, and how is that going to translate from the script to the camera to the screen? So I started thinking about that, and I don't know exactly the feeling that that's going to give, because we haven't seen any footage with this camera yet. But I am very, very excited about this. And now let's talk about what Ronin's got going on. Now, Ronin is, DJI rather, is definitely stepping up their game. They're definitely not quite on Movi's level, but for, us indie cinematographers, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because we're not going to be able to always be able to afford, or maybe ever be able to afford, the XL, the Movi XL. And the Ronin 2 is the small version of the XL. By the way, the XL, I was told, they are pricing it at less than $30,000. I don't know what that means. That could mean that it's going to be $29,999.99. It could mean that they end up pricing it at $22,000. I don't know. But that's what I was informed of. And in this talk today, I mean, we have a few more that we're going to be going through, but there's going to be a lot of speculation going on in here. But that's what we get when we have the first run of new products, you know, before firmware is updated, or after maybe we don't have the 3.1 version of firmware, but we have the 3.0 version of firmware. Now let's go ahead and spec out the Ronin 2. Now this thing is shaped basically exactly like the XL. We have an octagon shaped frame where you can be able to hold and, you know, hold or have two people or however you want to do it. You're going to have a lot of different abilities to be able to maneuver this gimbal support system for your camera. So the specs come down to this. The Ronin 2 can carry up to 30 pounds, and it can also be moving at about 75 miles an hour before it really encounters a lot of problems. Now here's where I get a little bit concerned about what I'm being told, because I know Movi is going to buffer their limits. They've said it can carry 50 pounds. I don't know what else I could throw on it, but if I hit 50 pounds and I need to go over a little bit, I'm not super concerned at 54, 53 pounds that it's not going to be able to handle it. The other thing, by the way, I want to jump back to the Movi just for this one last brief second, is that the Movi XL also has, on the motors themselves, this little piece that you can pop out and place in to lock the motor. And the benefit of doing this, and every gimbal should have this in the future, every single stabilization system that you have to balance should have this. And you can lock in two motors, and now you're just correcting the y-axis. You can lock in the other two, and now you're just correcting the z-axis. And then you can lock in the other one, and you're controlling the x-axis. Controlling all of these individually is going to give you a much simpler way to be able to balance your camera. Now the Ronin doesn't have any of these, but what the Ronin does have is it has motors that I was told are 5 times stronger than anything we've seen on the Ronin before. Whether it be the full size, the M, or anything, these motors are 5 times stronger than anything we've seen. It doesn't actually give me a number, it doesn't actually say anything to me personally. That just means I've got some strong motors to carry a 30-pound payload. Now there are some videos that DJI has put out that talk about the Ronin itself, the R2, and I just realized it's called R2. Star Wars joke. But if I'm looking at a comparison between the Movi XL and the Ronin 2, and the price of the Ronin 2 is going to make it so much easier. I mean, I don't think they've announced the price yet. I haven't heard it at least, but I'd be guessing between $3,000 and $6,000. I mean, it might be a little bit north of that, but not by much. But that's something that could definitely easily be rented out or be able to be used, and I can't confirm or deny if Camera Ambassador is going to pick one up, but I mean, I hope they do. As well as the XL and the Carbon too. You know, all this gear is exciting, and I really want to be able to see it in person, where I can really have my hands on it and do some reviews on them. So that's what we got from DJI, was the Ronin 2. Another thing, they have feed adapters on the bottom, which they've never had a way to set down any of their gimbals before, which is very, very helpful. But that was about it from them. They did have a remote system, as most companies now have remote systems for their operation, while somebody's being able to hold and run with the Steadicam of any sort. But it seems like it doesn't really compare as far as the Movi's side of their big support rig. I was also told that the Movi XL transmitter can go up to 2,000 feet, even though it's rated for 600 feet. And I don't know about the Ronin 2, but it did look like a very simple, easy to use setup for the remote for the Ronin 2. So we definitely have that to be looking forward to. Now for a little rumors and mystery type stuff. DigitalSputnik, they are a company that is based in Europe, and they have developed these, they're kind of like Kino lights that you can remotely dial in from an app exactly the color temperature that you want them to be. You can bring them down, bring them up. It's incredible. It's so cool. I mean, the fact that I can just have my phone in my pocket to be able, as a gaffer on set, be able to control different lights that are going on set, oh, that's so cool. That's awesome. I mean, we're turning a corner where I'm starting to feel, I guess I'll just call it Stark-like, like Tony Stark-like, you know, like where I can just pull up my phone and this pops on and it's going and it's good to go. Now I know people can start their cars with their phones and they can, you know, control. Well, one of the audio guys I work with regularly controls an entire sound mixing board from his iPad. I know we can do this, but it's entering my world now, so I'm excited about it. All right. They were supposed to be at NAB. Unfortunately, apparently, what I've heard from two different sources was that their products got caught up in customs on the European side, and while they got wrapped up in customs, they just decided that they were going to cancel. Hopefully they come out for Cinegear in a month later. I'm not going to be there, unfortunately, but hopefully we get some coverage of them then, because they are some very, very interesting lights. Not as dialed in specifically and don't really have an app for them, but Quasar is the next kind of step from DigitalSputnik, but they're still producing some very, very cool lights. They're also Kino tube style, and they dim anywhere in the Kelvin scale from 2K, all the way up to 5600. Now you can do this on a little dial that's at the top of the light, and you can bring it all the way up to 5600, down to 2, anywhere in between. And it doesn't seem insanely specific as far as exactly where you're dialing in to, but these are dimmable lights. It does not mean that we have dimmers on the lights, but they are dimmable lights, so that's definitely exciting as well. They do have battery-powered lights as well, so it's just the tubes themselves, and you can shove those things anywhere, really. I mean, like, you could even put those in the top visor of a car to be able to, you know, have a little bit of light there to be able to create that nice soft light, and you can make it cool, make it warm, do whatever you want with it. But these lights are very, very practical. They seem durable. They definitely seem durable. I mean, being able to drop these in Kino holders and different things like that, I mean, this is definitely going to be an asset for a lot of filmmakers. All right, Convergent Designs. They are known for the Odyssey. The Odyssey, the Odyssey being the monitor that can help you to be able to record in RAW, and be able to really dial in exactly your false color or whatever other specs you want to be able to work on your camera. It gives you a great image. It's a wonderful monitor. Well, they've come out with something new, and it's called the Apollo. Now, the Apollo is very interesting to me for one main reason, and that's good because it's the main thing that it does. The main reason that the Apollo is interesting to me is that I can shoot one 4K image, okay? So imagine this frame, it's one 4K image, and I have another person sitting here next to me. What I can do with this is, while I'm recording this 4K image, or rather, this 4K image, I can punch into myself at 1080, and I can also record this frame as well. And for the other person over here, I can punch in at 1080 again, and with my finger just move my 1080 box around in the 4K frame, and I can record this frame as well. So what that means is that I'm going to have one 4K image that's going to give me 3 different recordings. I'm going to have the 4K, and I'm going to have two 1080s. So this might not seem like a massive deal, but this is going to save so much time from having to duplicate files and then be able to punch in and then, you know, downsize everything. Everything's already set to go coming right out of the Apollo. So it's very, very exciting to be able to see something this cool come to people that, you know, have been saying, hey, what I'm doing is kind of difficult by going through and doing all this editing. If we could simplify it, it'd be great. It's a next step further down the rabbit hole of digital, and rabbit hole not being a connotation or a negative connotation at all. I love the rabbit hole. Let's go to Wonderland. Speaking of Wonderland, we have Leica. Now Leica has released two new sets of lenses this year, and the first one is the Thalia series. This is a series of 10 lenses that go for about $230,000. A little bit out of my budget and price range, but you never know who might get them. And they're very fast. They're very, very fast. And they go down to 2.2 all the way across the board. Now, these spherical lenses have some great bokeh quality to them. They look incredibly clear. They almost feel a little too perfect. And I know, like, it's like we're going for the best quality we possibly can, and then when we get it, Matt goes ahead and says it's too perfect, dirty it up. But seriously, I mean, there are two different schools of thought here, and that's totally fair. And granted, before I go any further, I just want to say that this lens, the 100mm, was on an Alexa 65. Which is what was used to film Doctor Strange and what was used to film The Revenant, which was used to film massive movies. There's only a limited number of them in the world, and they don't really go into production. Ari just has some of them, and they rent them out to people, and that's about it. That's about as far as it goes. So this is my first time being able to have an Alexa. So if it was on a Mini or an EV or SXT or anything else, I would have been able to say, oh, okay, and I'm seeing how this is actually working. But I've never worked with a 65 before, so I don't really know how much of what I was seeing was the lens and how much of what I was seeing was the new camera I've never worked with. But that being said, let's move on. The Thalia series is an incredibly crystal clear. It sees better than my eyes see, and I know that's the case because what I'm looking at on the monitor is more interesting and is better and is clearer to me than when I look up and I see what I'm looking at. Again, this might be a big quality of the camera itself, but I don't really think so. Now, my problem that I come across with the Thalia series is that I want to have the image that I want to have as close to it as I possibly can, whether it's for lighting or whether it's for just the exposure, whether it's just for the look of it, whether it's for the emotion, whether it's for the glass, any part of my image. I want to get it as close to perfect as when I shoot it as I possibly can, and sometimes to a fault. Sometimes I spend a little too much time working on an image to be able to make sure it looks just the right way. This does not apply to my review videos and everything. We just have a gray backdrop there and we keep it simple. But in my personal work and the other work I do with Camera Ambassador, I really like to dial in exactly what I'm looking for. Now, this lens doesn't quite give me that two things. One is the depth effect. Now that's different than, you know, having a 2.2 lens. I'm not talking about, you know, my lens being shallow enough for me. That's not what I'm on about. What I'm talking about is when I look at an image and I'm saying, oh, okay, we have about 200 yards that way, but it just seems flat. That's not what I'm saying. This is a flat image. I don't want a flat image. I want an image with depth. And yes, you can help to create that in post, but the lens has a big job to do, a lot of big jobs to do. And one of them is to be able to provide depth. And it does make your subject pop, the lens itself does make your subject pop in the foreground, but that back seems like it's right behind them. I'm not kidding, the back wall was probably about 300 yards or so away from where this camera was located at, and it looked like it wasn't more than 50 yards behind them. Like it was just right there. And I want to be able to see a lens that can give me a very large amount of clarity in what I'm looking at, but also give me this depth perspective that I'm also looking for as well, because then I can also better tell a story that way. You know, I can better make somebody feel like they're more far off, they're more distant, or when somebody is right over their shoulder, then it feels like they're right over their shoulder because they are. That's what I want from a lens a lot of times. The M0.8s. I don't know why they're called the 0.8s, because they are all at a 1.2. However, the 50mm does go down to a 0.9, which is definitely exciting there, and they did not have that available for use today, so I didn't really get to see the 0.9 f-stop in action. But these lenses look a lot more vintage. They have a great look to them. Still kind of missing and lacking in that depth section there. But what we do have is sort of a vintage type of look. Not only to the lens body itself, but also to the lens itself. But also to the image itself. Like I said, it's been a long day. Now, if you have an RE camera or a RED camera and you say, okay, so I need a Leica lens and this adapter for this, and I need to, that's an awesome thing, because we no longer need adapters for Leica lenses, because they have, or will be in 4 weeks, releasing an RE mount for the Leica glass. Struggled through that one there. An RE mount for the Leica glass to mount onto the RE, whether it's Mini, SXT, or EV, anything like that. You can now mount, or in 4 weeks, you'll be able to mount Leica glass on RE cameras, and this is very, very exciting. Now, I was told that the RED mount from Leica to the RED was also released just this week. So that's definitely very exciting, and we're going to be able to have a lot of fun checking that out. And I hope you're able to as well. Now, moving on. The M0.8s. One issue that I really did have with them, and these lenses are considerably cheaper, coming in at $49,000 for the set, is that the iris and the focus ring are so close together. I mean, it might be that far apart. It's very, very close. And what I feel like as a cinematographer looking at this, as someone who's going to have to operate with this lens, is what am I going to do for my follow focus and for pulling my aperture? Because I'm used to go ahead and drop some wireless on there and be able to control that, but I don't have gears that go that thin. And these focus ring, the follow focus and the aperture ring are very, very thin. So I'm not saying it is a problem, but it's definitely something that could be a problem. So it's something I want to check out and look further into, but it absolutely 100% is something to be aware of. Moving on. Tippin. Tippin has released a new Steadicam, which I'm definitely excited about, but I did not have an opportunity to check out today. I'm definitely going to be checking that out tomorrow after I go check out the RE Follow Focus. And then after I'm done over there, I'm going to go hop on that Steadicam action and give that a try. It's a whole vest and arm system and everything as well. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I really have high hopes for this. Tippin is a great company. They have great representatives, people who back them, who I trust Tippin because of the people who back them. One of the people that back Tippin is a gentleman by the name of Shane Hurlbut, ASC. If you do not know him, please remove the rock that you've been living from under. He has a lot of incredible material out there on the web. You can go out there on the web, like if you go to the World Wide Web, a lot of material out on the internet to be able to help you become a better cinematographer is a great resource. And Shane Hurlbut gave a talk today on the Tippin stage, and it was all about talking about the thing that he does the thing that I think he does best, which is lighting and moving the camera through emotion, and thinking about how your subject sees what's going on. Well, that's the motivation that you should use for lighting, and that's the motivation that you should use for moving the camera. If somebody's feeling very trapped, then yeah, you can tighten in on them and all that. You can do that, sure, but he went a different way with it that kind of expanded my mind a little bit, and that was this. He went ahead and said, okay, we want this person to feel trapped, like they can't get away. So what are they not going to be able to get away from? They're not going to be able to get away from the camera. So they filmed this scene in Fathers and Daughters where Amanda Seyfried was running down the street and she was trying to get away from Aaron Paul, and they followed her into a taxi cab and down the street and out of the taxi cab, and then following her still and across the street and everything. I mean, I wouldn't call it claustrophobic, because it wasn't just it wasn't Hurt Locker type style, it wasn't Gravity style, but it definitely made me feel uncomfortable. And I'm not able to identify that feeling as of yet. Tend to have a problem with that. But I can definitely say that it put me in a place where I wasn't in this girl's shoes, but I felt like I was starting to see where she was coming from. And he did the same thing for lighting too, talking about when she was a little girl and the way she looked at everything, the way everything glowed and the way everything was, and it was just everything was beautiful and everything had magic to it, that magic that when we have when we're kids, before we figure out that magic is just called science. The next thing that we have going on, or not going on, is Canon. Canon has a great big booth set up. They're doing a lot of broadcast stuff. They're talking about a lot of the things that they have set up and they've been doing. They have two main releases, and the first one being, I'm very, very happy to be able to say, C-Log for the 5D Mark IV. This has been a long time coming, and Technicolor had an incredible log that you could download off of their website. We did a video on that. You can hop onto our playlist of 5D Mark IV videos and go check that out. But we did a video on installing the Technicolor, but now I assume that there's going to be some sort of firmware update or download available from Canon, and that will be in July. We're going to have the ability to be able to have C-Log on our 5D Mark IVs. So, very excited about that. They also released another cinema lens. Now, I don't even remember the focal length of this lens. It is an 80 to something, and it's a cinema lens. But the reason I didn't pay very much attention to it was because it wasn't available to be messed with. We couldn't actually put it on a camera and see what it was doing. It was in a glass case, and it kind of was there to be looked at. And this is NAB, where we're supposed to be able to take things out and play with them and all. So I do apologize, but I didn't give it much thought or much attention after I saw that it couldn't be used. So there is a new cinema zoom that is going to be coming from Canon. I don't know the dates of when they'll be released, but as far as I know, that could be prototype. So they could be well into production at this point. but we have no way of knowing. There's not a ton of data that we were getting from them. So next up on the list, Atmos. Atmos is a great company that has been innovating like crazy. They're not quite on the raw side as convergent design is, with expanding the way your camera works in that way, but they are 4K. But the Atmos is a 4K recorder, so it will take the HDMI or SDI output from your camera and record it in greater detail than your camera is actually recording it. It's a bit of a mind bender if you haven't experienced this before about how this is actually working, but it is recording more information than your camera is actually recording. It's not about the sensor, it's just transmitting the data in a better way so that it's not being as compressed onto those SD or CF or CFast cards, and it's giving you a great ability to be able to see more of what your camera is truly capable of. Now they had two big releases. The first one is the Flame. Okay, now the Flame is a larger monitor that you're able to actually view your footage on and be able to record it. It comes in the Ninja and Shogun style, which is just XLR, which is just HDMI and SDI. And so you have those ways of being able to record it, and I believe it's a 7.5 inch monitor. I'm just going to look that up here while we're chatting. The other release that was announced and is now for sale, the Flame, the Ninja Flame, by the way. It's $795, and it's up on their website. It's a 7-inch monitor, and it looks fantastic. Now, the other monitor that was released and recording device that was released from Atmos was the Shogun, or the Sumo. The Sumo. The Sumo is a 19-inch monitor and recording device to be able to capture all of the information that is coming off of your beautiful sensor, all in glorious 4K. One hiccup. It only transfers and captures the 4K. Now, this is fine for anybody who is operating most cameras, but if you're operating something on a larger scale, if you're operating the Red Dragon, for instance, and you're recording at 6K, or if you're recording at 8K, you're not going to be able to transfer any larger than 4K HD over to this monitor. It was definitely something that I saw and I went, right, right, I forgot about that. But they did have it set up on a Red, and the monitors do have the ability to be able to view anamorphic, which is fantastic because who doesn't love anamorphic? And now we have the ability to be able to, stretch our images out from anamorphic lenses. And speaking of anamorphic lenses, Cook. I love this company. They have created some killer looking lenses. And they had this, I think it was like a 44 to 440 anamorphic zoom lens. I mean, this thing's a Canon. It's wider than the screen. And that thing was so cool to be able to see and mess around with. Kind of sadly, kind of not, because it's not like I'm going to be able to get my hands on one anytime soon. That was the only one that was ever produced by them. And so it's on show at NAB. So definitely exciting. Now, two new lens releases very quick from Cook before I let you get going out of here, or before maybe you can shut me off whenever you want, but you're going to miss out on something really cool. Cook has announced and has delivered full frame lenses. Now, all of their other lenses have been the 35. That's what's been cropped down to. But these beasts of lenses are full frame. The last one that they have released, and they look incredible, by the way. The last set of lenses that they've released have been the Pancros. I heard a bunch of people saying it a bunch of different ways. But basically, this is not even a new lens. It is, but it's not. It is, but it's not. It is. It is a lens that was first launched in the 60s. And when I was talking about lenses being too clear or something like that, what they did back then was, in order to coat the lens, they mixed a little bit of material into the glass. It's a little kind of harmful known substance known as lead. Now, they put lead inside the glass, and it got this beautiful attribute going around and this haze to the glass. It was just phenomenal, and they've updated that lens now. Not lead, not with lead, with synthetic, safe materials. They've updated this lens. And the coolest thing about this lens, and you have to go take a look at this for yourself because it's super cool, is that when you're looking at somebody who's in focus and then you have bokeh lights in the background, what is going to happen as you take the camera and you pan it off to the left or pan it off to the right, and you pass these bokeh lights, and these bokeh lights, not that these are bokeh lights, and these bokeh lights end up hitting the edge of the frame. When they're out of focus lights hitting the edge of the frame, they start to morph in sort of like a spherical type shape, just a little bit, just a tiny little bit. And they bend a little bit. But if you were to put somebody's in focus face at the edge of the lens, it would not bend. It's going to bend bokeh. It's going to bend some things that are slightly out of focus, but it will not bend that which is in focus. This is a lens that has a lot of qualities and a lot of consistencies of that with an anamorphic, but it does not have the squeeze, obviously. So that is everything. Oh, by the way, jumping all the way back to the beginning, the ARRI skylights, you can go on their website and go ahead and take a look and click on all the different effects, all the different 42 effects that they have. I will try to find that and post that in the comment in the description, or in the description of this video, for you to be able to take a look at, as well as any other information that I have. But keep in mind, I gotta be out there tomorrow morning, doors open, to be able to go check out that Follow Focus by ARRI. I'm so excited to be able to share all of this with you. Thank you for watching. My name's Matt Williams, and I'm with Camera Ambassador. Mahalo.